Yeah, I'm about 39 years old. Had an experience when I was about 12 years old when I was walking back from the park with my uncle, my little sister, and my little brother. We lived up in the Bronx in New York. And on our way home, my uncle spotted something up in the sky. And usually he's a very lighthearted, jokey kind of guy. And the only time I've ever seen him dead serious, terrified. He told us to look straight ahead and walk fast. So we had about a 5-block walk home, and he wanted us to speed walk. 12-year-old gets told not to look. The first thing I do is I look, and up in the sky, I could just see a ball of light. It looked kind of like a helicopter headlight, but without the helicopter. And it was following us. It followed us. Yeah, so the object followed us for a few blocks. And it wasn't until now that I'm an adult that I know that these balls of light were our UAP.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Debriefed. We're going to look at a patch review, and we're also going to continue our 3-part series into reading through the 4CHAN Whistleblowers posts. It's been very interesting so far. I know a lot of you are invested, as am I, and this second portion is going to be probably the heaviest, so strap yourselves in. Also, if you're familiar with this content, you don't mind, just hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and check us out on YouTube memberships. We just launched the membership plan, which is exactly like the Patreon plan, but if you don't want to leave YouTube and go to Patreon, you could do it through YouTube. If you're looking for weekly extra Area 52 content, look no further. Thankfully, 2 memberships and Patreon, it allows me to do these videos as it makes up pretty much half of the income that we generate here at Area 52. So without your support, this would not exist. So thank you so much. We also just started a book club and are currently reading Passport to Magonia by Jacques Vallée, which should be really interesting. And that happens in the top secret section of the Discord that you have access to once you sign up to these things. Fret not, you don't have to sign up if you just want to consume the content. This content is here for you. It is free. The rest of the stuff is really just extra and it helps support this channel. Folks, now let's get into some patch. We're going to get into a deep dive into these patches here in this launch, namely the NROL-49, the National Reconnaissance Office Launch 49.
Liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy rocket carrying the NROL-49 mission for the National Reconnaissance Office.
The NRO, for those of you who don't know, is basically America's premier spy organization. They purchased these rockets and spy satellites from companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin, which have formed ULA, and essentially launched them up into space, and they cost billions of dollars, and we're not allowed to know anything about them. But they do put out a patch for the mission and a crest for the satellite itself, which does circle the Earth, and these patches are often very nefarious looking. They have some very strange symbolism on them. So as you can see, this first one, which is the mission patch, there is no description from the government on what this is. We can break it down right now. It features what seems like a burning female angel or devil holding a pitchfork in one hand, a wrench in the other, with a fiery sort of flame encircling her body, the Earth being overshadowed or eclipsed by the moon or some type of shadow. I mean, just stars. And the word Betty, it is very strange. This is highly suspicious. How could you, as a government entity, put this out and be like, yeah, they're not going to ask any questions? Like, this is insane looking. And this is on their website, too. This isn't a secret. So although we don't know what the satellite is for or where it'll be going, like, what is this? Diana Pasulka has a really interesting take on this in her book, American Cosmic. I highly suggest you read it. It's a really good book. But it does talk about how NASA sort of engages in a lot of these rituals before and during the launches. She kind of puts it in a very eloquent way, basically saying that they want everything on their side. These launches are so freaking precise that they need absolutely every single facet and angle of this launch covered before they send it off into space, including esoteric things, including spiritual guidance. And so often they will depict things like this and have these sort of ceremonies and rituals, or even get the satellites blessed by the church, and because they want everything to go right.
And what I found out, which he actually did not know, and I pointed it out to him, was that the whole thing was a ritual. The whole thing was ritualized. So they identified certain time periods astronomically when it would be beneficial to launch. And they also had, the rockets had Roman gods on them. And they also had Latin, 1st century Latin, not medieval Latin. It wasn't Catholic Latin. It was basically imperialistic Latin. And so, and everybody had to stay in their own space. Like there was a place where they had to stay. They wore the same clothes.
It does seem a little strange to me as well, trust me. So this is the launch of the Delta IV Heavy rockets at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California that happened in January of 2011. NRO-30SW, that is Space Wing, that is the branch of the Air Force that took care of the space launches, which is now probably taken care of by Space Force. Primaris Gravis Ex Acacis loosely translates in Old Latin to the most important fall. What are they talking about here? Are they talking about, you know, fallen angels? Because it kind of looks like they are, especially with the pitchfork, the fiery hair, and the wings. You know, the fall is often referred to in Christianity when the angels led a rebellion against God. That was the fall of the angels, which created Satan. So there's that. Also in the book of Enoch, angels descended to earth and taught forbidden knowledge to humans, hence perhaps the wrench here. Perhaps we are receiving some type of forbidden knowledge from these fallen angels, and the wrench represents engineering or technology. I couldn't find anywhere that depicted a positive image of a fiery being with wings and a pitchfork for the life of me. There's no mention of it on the internet. This could be a pitchfork and it could be a trident. You know, if it is a trident, it does symbolize the power over waters, the sort of trident of Poseidon. But if it is a pitchfork, it does have more of a malicious connotation to it. And I think every connection to pitchfork in folklore goes back to torture and torment. Yeah, make of that what you will. But the shadow cast on the L right above it is the shape of the rocket. Here's the rocket itself. Here's the shadow. You can see that there is a similarity here. Now, there are 4 stars on the left and then 1 star that is higher. I think that the stars probably symbolize some type of satellite or some type of project, and this is the 5th one being launched. Now, the word Betty is really interesting. This probably refers to Betty Sapp, who, when this patch was launched, was slated to be the next director of the NRO and the first female director of the NRO. Betty also worked as manager of the A-10 engine at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which notoriously conspiracy theorists say housed the Roswell crash. And in 1997, she joined the CIA. In 2007, she was appointed Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Programs, responsible for executive oversight of defense intelligence-related acquisition programs and execution of the military intelligence program. Now, that is a mouthful. Suffice to say that she had a very important role within the government, and it had to do with money and programs. All right, look no further than that. We have the word Betty in red. We have this being in red. Are they saying that this is Betty, that she is the person bringing this forbidden knowledge with her to the project? You know, what does this symbolize? I don't exactly know, but it definitely is suspicious. We have the sun setting sort of in the background, which, you know, make your own leaps as to what that is. But then you also have the Earth being eclipsed. Now, it does look like that's the moon, but it also kind of looks like a shadow as it follows the lines that are drawn on the Earth. So I'm not sure if it's a shadow or if it's the moon, but if it is the moon, on the far side of the moon, you have some lettering hidden there as well. And I couldn't really find out anything about these letters aside from NROV, which is, you know, National Reconnaissance Office, Vandenberg. But then you have the number 4, SLS, you have RDG, and you have AL. And what I assume is that this is just crew members, kind of like an Easter egg. And when the crew does these patches, they do like to personalize it a little bit and have some cheeky fun, put their names in there or their code names or their nicknames. So I assume that's what that is. It does look insane. I don't know what to make of this. You guys let me know. Now we have this patch here. This is the actual crest that was slapped on the side of the rocket. It features a phoenix rising from flames with the American flag in the background. It features the title Major Diabolus Quem Sciis, which translates to the devil you know. That comes from the old saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Okay? VAFB is Vandenberg Air Force Base, first Delta 4 Heavy, that was the rocket, and SLC is Space Launch Complex 6, and that is the place where they launch these heavy rockets. By the way, this particular rocket, I think, was slated to cost between $6 and $9 billion. It's a lot of tax money. $6 to $9 billion. And then I believe Lockheed or Boeing or one of the two came $2 billion under budget, and that was like a big win for them. So good job saving taxpayers $2 billion on, the 15th spy satellite of this kind. So I found an article on the patch from 2009, which is really interesting and we'll read. But first, this is from the NRO website. They do have a pictorial history of these patches, which I'll leave the link to. But their description is the phoenix rising from the flames represents the birth of the operational satellite out of the acquisition womb. That's a mouthful. The phoenix rises above, watching ever intently down upon us. Okay. Apparently from the acquisition womb, right? Very normal thing to say. Born out of the flames, they represent the trials and tribulations leading to the creation of the program. The flames also represent the intensity, tenacity, and passion displayed by the SPO team during the life of the acquisition. What? Yay, we're going to acquire something. We need fiery passion in order to acquire this piece of equipment. What are you talking about? I don't think that makes any sense whatsoever. This all sounds like a cover. This just seems like something they cocked up to appease some people who are being a little nosy and are like, just give them something. Write some BS down on a piece of paper. Who cares what we give them? We have a much better deep dive here by Dwayne Day, and I'll leave the link to this article below. But he says the patch also features 14 stars, including one being carried in the bird's beak. There also appears to be a 15th star obscured by the bird's wing. Now, there's a long tradition in such patches for the stars to symbolize the number of payloads launched. 14 stars just happens to be the number of KH-11 type electro-optical satellites successfully launched by the United States over the years, including one being carried into orbit by this bird. What's interesting here, the KH-11 satellite is also known as the Keyhole or the Kennan satellite. In 2019, we actually received an image from what seems to be this very satellite. And check out the optical capabilities of this satellite. This is an Iranian launch facility after a launch went wrong. This was leaked by Donald Trump in 2019 via Twitter. And this image was basically cross-referenced and triangulated by the internet and the trajectory of these various satellites in orbit, and they all said that this lines up with the shadows of the Earth to be this one we're talking about right now. So from space, they were able to have this image, and I get the feeling they could have zoomed in a lot more. So although Keyhole is like peeking into a keyhole so you can see something that's hidden, I also feel like they could probably see a keyhole from space with this thing. All of these symbols hint that this is the 15th launch of the KH-11. The KH-11 and its descendants have been in service since 1976. But apparently, the program was scheduled for replacement by a new series of satellites, part of Future Imagery Architecture, or FIA. But FIA ran into problems and was canceled. So as the FIA was falling apart, according to news reports, the NRO, which builds and operates all the spy satellites, decided to assemble one last KH-11 from spare parts. Thus, this might be the spacecraft rising from the flames of the FIA. And although the KH-11, or whatever it's called these days, is an old devil, at least it's a known devil. So that might explain that little saying there. So that is it for the NRO patch deep dive of the day, of the week. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know if you want to see another one of these. I got more patches available. And if you want your very own Area 52 patch, these are available online. You can check us out at first.shop. We have a whole section where we have Area 52 merch. It goes a long way to help us out here and to help continue making this content. Folks, you now know what time it is. It is time to tackle part 2 of this very strange, very bizarre, very revealing Q&A with an alleged whistleblower that happened a year and a half ago on 4chan. I say the word 4chan, a lot of you cringe and say, how could you believe anything that's on that website? To that, I say, yeah, I agree. I'm not saying I believe any of this. I'm saying What's interesting is that reading through this, we are noticing lots of things coming to light right now that match up to the things that were said in these documents. That's all I'm saying. We're trying to go through them before the November 13th hearing so that maybe we can revisit this after the hearing and to see if anything matches up, especially because, Immaculate Constellation, especially because we got Tim Gallaudet, who was a part of the naval intelligence, and he's going to be testifying. And we know we're going to be dealing with some USOs, unidentified submerged objects, during this hearing. And that's all that this document talks about. So we're going to try to find those connections in the next coming weeks. But for now, let's get past part 2. Strap yourselves in, leave a like, let's go. I'm going to do this in the following manner. I'm going to say question, which is a question from one of the people on 4chan, and then I'm going to say answer, and answer is from the person writing the Q&A or alleging that they were part of this program. Pay attention to the Space Force. We were told this would be a long project. Disinformation was one of the key takeaways. New management was hell-bent on going back to secrecy. They thought we were way too open with our operation. So when new management took over, they were like, yeah, you guys are giving away way too much. We need to lock this back down. Question. Sounds like the OP's ship is later form. I would not be surprised if the pilots are insentient craft. Answer. No, they are remotely controlled or directly controlled. Question. The zookeeper analogy is strange. Agree with another here that most zookeepers like their jobs and care about the animals. They display high levels of empathy. Answer. Some of the tools designed for abduction would make you rethink this. Okay, hold on. Now we're getting abduction talk? A lot of them cause pain or harm. A common tool we find is one that seems to scramble coherent thoughts and make the subject childlike. The best way I can describe its use is like forcing a stroke without actually having one. It makes you delirious, but also childlike for a few hours. I'm currently reading a lot of David Jacobs' work right now, namely the book The Threat, which talks a lot about abductions and hybridization and that type of thing. This is very interesting. Now, does this person posting also have an affinity for UFO books and they're making this up? That could possibly be the case here, but terrifying nonetheless. Virtually causing a temporary lobotomy does not sound pleasant at all. Question, are these beings incapable of empathy? Do they have emotions? I assume they must have learned something from the recovered bodies. Answer, never interacted with them, only heard information passed along. They can be upset, though, with previously mentioned topics. They definitely have emotion. So again, I think he's referring to when we talk about nuclear weaponry or war or anything that has a big impact on the planet. I think that's when they get evolved emotionally. Question, are they from off-world and true ETs? Answer, the US and leadership were adamant they were off-world. Question, why the cloak and dagger? Answer, you're asking the same questions leadership struggled with. We were not entirely sure. Question, if the Air Force is confused like you say, why is it the only agency we know of that is not cooperating with Congress in the ARROW? Answer, you might get a laugh out of this. The USAF is kept in the dark. We operated above them. A close coworker wondered if even the president knew, namely Trump, because we both thought he would just tell everyone. And we now know from several interviews that Trump has had that he has apparently been briefed on some of this stuff, met with some pilots who say they saw some orbs. To what extent we know that's true, we don't, but, he said it multiple times. Question, any idea what they might be waiting for? Answer, personally, I think they just want us to grow and become sentient. UFOs arrive all the time and dock with the mobile construction unit. The way I see it, travel time is quite fast. If something was coming to destroy us, it would have arrived already. Sigh of relief right there. But I do agree as well. I think if you can zip around the planet, perhaps around the solar system and the galaxy, I don't think it would take that much time to get here. I think they would have already achieved what they set out to do. Question, finding out the truth made them cry and fear for their lives their offspring will live. Not sure what this is referring to. Answer, I've always suspected my department was under a much higher one with information. I can't speak to any horrors or worries, since none were mentioned unless we were pitching theories. As I stated above, I think a lot of the U.S. top brass don't even know about it. I heard the phrase Bill Clinton thrown around, regarding access to information. I'm pretty sure he asked if I'm not mistaken. So I think he's saying that when Bill Clinton was in office, he would ask about these aliens, and that was the response that they were shouting around the office, I guess. Question, credible, remote viewing. Pick one, Anand. So basically saying, which is it? Are we saying credible or are we saying remote viewing? Clearly this person doesn't think remote viewing is credible. Answer, is this an actual thing on here? Genuinely curious. Would have lurked more if I had time. Not sure what this is referring to. Question, are they human looking or do they resemble something else? Is it something we've seen written about in UFO topics or pop culture? Answer, they are smaller than humans and look like your typical gray aliens you see. Holes for ears, and they can look at very bright objects without being blinded. I've never seen one move their mouth, but I also never interacted with one. So here's the thing. Previously, he did say the only time he's seen these grays were dead bodies. He saw 2 dead bodies, he said. Now he's saying they can look at bright objects. He said this multiple times. I guess that's just common knowledge around there. Maybe it has to do with interfacing with the craft itself and the way that the craft is made. They're like, well, how can this work? They must have, something around their eyes so they can shield from the light. I don't know. I'm speculating here. Question, what do you know about these? Operation Fishbowl. Answer, nothing. Virginia crash. Nothing. Roswell crash. Answer, they were accurate on some things. The material could have been internal components or small pieces of the alloy around the craft. The alloys I saw look different from the pictures. Question, Operation Moondust. Answers, rumors only. Question, besides Russians, do any Europoors have data or programs researching this as well? Guessing he means Europeans. Answer, they are mostly in the dark and probably on the same level as United States Air Force. Question, did SOCOM put up that open public contract trying to get someone to build them what equates to one of these UFO in terms of capability as a honeypot to try to catch non-human actors in military contracting companies? Answer, no idea. From my limited knowledge of the bio side, I doubt they are trying to infiltrate us. They seem to know a lot about us. Abductions still occur mostly in areas with contamination or disease. Now that's an interesting hypothesis as well, being that if you saw your population of mice declining in a certain area because disease, you would extract one of them and try to fix the problem or figure the problem out and then place them back into society. Question, did you hear anything related to a U.S. secret space program? Not that I put any credibility in the words of Corey Goode, but Gary McKinnon claimed to see files describing off-world, personal, and ship names that did not exist. This is a very interesting question because Gary McKinnon was pretty much one of the biggest whistleblowers of all time. This guy was a professional hacker, hacked NASA, biggest hack in history. This guy is now in hiding, basically, because if not, they'll arrest him. But essentially, he went into the back end of NASA and saw a whole bunch of ship names of ships that didn't really exist in the water and a whole bunch of people that he couldn't really find. Apparently, he found a whole section of NASA that scrubs these NASA satellite photos of the UFOs that show up in them. So basically deleting all these. And this is what he alleged. Answer, yes, the U.S. wants to be able to leave the solar system with their craft and explore. They were working tongue-in-cheek with the Russians before I left. I'm sure the invasion of Ukraine put a stop to that rather quickly. Question, do all nations coordinate their efforts studying this Bermuda Triangle factory, or is each doing their own thing? Answer, each of them is doing their own thing. U.S. is pretty greedy with what it finds. We will usually extract information, but never offer any in return. And that seems to be the case with a lot of things. Even if you look at the Virginia crash, U.S. shows up on Brazilian soil, unannounced, collects the stuff, leaves. That's kind of their MO. Question, what is the mining tool China has supposedly reverse engineered capable of? This is interesting. They talk about this in the previous one. Answer, basically it extracts the minerals via beam/light directly out of the rock. It has the ability to fill the rock to some degree. China was able to figure out how it works and make a similar version. The problem with the one they built is it only operates for a few seconds before it runs out of power. They still don't understand element 115. It also exploded one time and they had to remake it. What an interesting thing to say if you're lying. What a weird fact to throw in there. Question, are the made-to-spec craft you describe just the metal-looking spheres observed and brought up in the latest Aero hearings? Seems to be a lot of orbs and discs and tic-tacs. Answer, yes, this is exactly why they always look so different. Things like triangles and hard-edged squares don't exist, though. Pill shapes are extremely sought after, and some we think are freighters. Okay. Question, not a huge variety you'd expect from made-to-spec craft. Answer, the best analogy I can give for the variety spec comment is think of it like wrapping food in tinfoil on a plate. It's a bad analogy, but you get the idea. Usually they will always be round or oval, sometimes even pill-shaped. The tinfoil fits the intended function of covering everything without squishing it. So if you were to take a plate, put some food on it, put some tinfoil, that's kind of what it would look like. Makes sense to me. It's an interesting take. Question, even stories of MJ-12, Majestic 12, suspect the president didn't have a need to know. Answer, staff at our agency were usually older and had been there forever. This tracks when considering term limits. Question, many abduction stories seem malevolent. Answer, previous post I mentioned tools. I think the harm they cause is the same as cutting open a mouse to check the local population for signs of bad health in a population. Collateral damage. I think that's what I suspect too. It's like for the greater good type deal. Question, do they just not like humans and like the planet? What's to stop them from just culling us all? Answer, they could absolutely destroy us if they wanted to. They've started launch sequences before that we suspect were tests on what they are dealing with. My personal view is that they have to stay out of our way but keep us from destroying ourselves. I imagine life elsewhere in the universe often destroys itself. Maybe he's alluding to some type of agreement, between the extraterrestrials being like, hey, let's not harm them, but let's take the guns out of their hands. They're, they hurt each other, fine, but let's try to keep the nukes at bay at least. Question, do you think we'll get more answers from the government? Disclosure, as in them telling us aliens exist, or will the cover-up continue? Answer, at one point they briefed us about opening up information about the craft, but not the construction unit. Nothing happened for months. Now leadership shows up suddenly. It's back to bullshit and secrets again. Question, as the USAF, they must have images and videos of these things pretty close up. You think they would be the agency with the most knowledge of the subject? Answer, the USAF's goal is to fight other countries. They have footage, but it was mostly discovered and recorded by sheer chance. The Space Force, however, will be an entirely new thing. Their focus is similar to ours with a sprinkle of disinformation. And as we were mentioning previously, NRO as well, that works with the Space Force. These people are the people that have footage and photos. Make no mistake. If they can take a photo of a penny on the ground, they can find a UFO in the ocean. Question, are all these craft related to this factory and Greys? Answer, the ones we looked at, yes. Question, or are there more species coming here? Answer, possible, but I wasn't made aware. It wouldn't shock me. I've wondered if we are being protected from others. Some of you mentioned that in last week's comments as well. Question, do we produce it or is it collected from other craft and just recycled? Because that seems to be the case. Answer, we tried to produce it and failed. This is, I think, referring to the alloy or the 115. We tried to produce it and failed. We produced a shitty variant of it and use it for certain parts we build. Most of what we used for things that cannot be replaced is recycled. Our ability to rehash their shit has gotten better slowly. Again, not very technical with the jargon here. Leads me to believe that this might be lies. If you're in charge of craft analysis and retrieval, unless you're just some mindless jarhead soldier that can be programmed by the government, but this person seems to be, intelligent, you would think there would be more technical jargon. Question, or is it used up to the point we need to produce it to continue testing? Answer, they set aside certain amounts for research. Most of it goes towards reuse. Question, is there tech that was gained from these craft that the military widely uses today, or civilians for that matter? Answer, a lot of your stealth aircraft sport smoother designs for one. Learning to track them also helped with targeting software. Laser technology comes to mind since it's a crippled version of what they use. Most of what I saw was way above us. It's hard to put the hammers and how you see through them into words. It's not like a drone camera, and it's not a clear image, to us at least. So what seems to be the case here, first of all, is that lasers, he says, the ones that we use are like a crippled version of what they use. Now, there are videos out there and testimony of people who've seen these crafts use lasers to sort of scan things. They do use some type of laser technology. Interesting that he says our stealth capability has gotten better, and learning to track other vehicles has gotten better because of us trying to track these vehicles. That makes sense to me as well. Now, it's not like a drone camera. It's not a clear image to us, at least. You know, this might be referring to the comment made about how they see differently. Maybe they see a different spectrum of light, and perhaps in the ships, the projection that is being shown in the ship of what the craft is looking at has to be deconstructed by, you know, their capabilities somehow. I don't know. So he's talking about natural disasters here. Answer: they have a distinct fascination with radiation. Remember how I mentioned they didn't go far from home base? When Fukushima happened, the construction facility deployed multiple UFOs to the location over multiple weeks. They are also very interested in Ebola at one point. We can't confirm abductions since the local population is, you get the idea, no one cared. Question: according to Elizondo, Italians seem to have a good grasp on the phenomenon, including that they originate somewhere from the Mediterranean. Is it possible there is another UFO factory there? Answer: starting this thread and seeing everyone mention the Arctic has me wondering if there were others. It would make sense with other sightings since, as mentioned previously, far from home is rare. Basically saying that these craft never really leave the base that they were constructed in. Possibly there should be logically other, MCUs around the world. Question: does the moon hold anything of interest? Answer: no, not that I'm aware of. We know that UFOs entering and exiting the atmosphere do not go towards any known planet often. Okay. Question: 1, are there flying orbs just scouts? ? Research drones? ? Answer: do you mean orbs in the sky? Or do you mean landed craft deploying them? I've mentioned previously that there are tools that are shaped like hammers. They emit extremely bright light and are used as a sort of drone or scout. They are able to view almost 360 degrees and detect everything from minerals to bio. If a human encounters them, they usually are deployed to keep watch and figure out when to wrap up and leave. Question: do you think they interfere with our general science or investigations? Answer: yes. They do not want to be studied. They also do not collect down craft or occupants. It seems to be an oh well approach. Element 115 is the exception. They don't seem to enjoy the idea of us toying with it. Probably for good reason. Question: do they seem to learn when the craft get caught? Answer: yes. There's an area they actively avoid in Mexico, among others. They also deploy more drones than piloted craft unless absolutely necessary. So there's a place in Mexico. Now, I've heard whispers, especially also mentioned in Diana Pasulka's work, in Mexico or New Mexico or between New Mexico and Mexico, there is a place called the Giving Fields, pretty much, where things turn up, namely craft or metamaterial. I've only heard rumors of this, but that would make sense. Question: do they become harder to capture next time? Answer: yes. Question: is the technology they reproduce increasing rapidly or lags for years? Answer: I wouldn't say it's an increase in technology. It's more like adjustments / better understanding of how to operate. It's one reason we thought, quote unquote, about 100 years for the first deployment of the construction facility. If we're here for years, we would have seen the majority of all adjustments made. Question: is your department using AI to learn more about the findings you make around their tech? Answer: not when I was around last, no. Taking a break for a bit, will be on later tonight. They were not, I can guarantee they're probably using AI now. Question: does a factory produce any signature? Heat, electromagnetic, how do you track it? Answer: both. We rely mostly on detecting the gravity it produces. It normally doesn't produce heat outright. When it does, we believe it's in the process of construction since a small heat buildup can be detected when a craft returns or exits. We think this happens when it's being broken back down into parts or assembled. We can only detect these heat signatures when it's near the surface of the ocean, so sometimes a UFO will pop out on us. Now that's interesting. That's a little bit more technical, and that, makes me a little bit more, raises my eyebrows a little bit more. Question: how do you know about other countries' efforts? Answer: we don't obtain the information directly, it's passed along to us. My guess would be the typical way we get anything, such as spying or bribery. Question, and why does USAF not know about other countries' efforts, but your department does? Answer, my department sits above USAF for UFO recovery and information in the same way the USAF sits above me on military plans for Ukraine. We were told at the time that if we had to give away information, only tell the public what the USAF knows. I'm pretty sure other countries know departments like mine exist. So he's alluding to, that this program is above classified. It's above top secret. It's above anything. It's a black project. It's something that no one's supposed to know about, but it functions essentially above all the other things in regards to UFOs, but not in regards to, other missions. Question, alternatively, do they know about U.S. efforts? Answer, Russia and China, yes. Others, it depends on the level of information. Some governments still don't know aliens even exist or aren't sure. Question, how do we know you aren't some FBI agent or other glowy? Answer, there is no way for me to prove that to you. You should always be asking, though. All I can say is pay attention to the things as time progresses, and you'll be able to look back and see I was right. That's what we're doing. We're paying attention. We are paying attention, and we are looking back. And man, this might be really interesting if you guys, put a pin in this video, bookmark this video, this series, come back to it after the hearing, or it's all BS. Who knows, right? That's the fun part of being on the internet, is that we don't have to believe any of this. We can just read it, dive deep into the lore, have fun, and go about our days. Or, we could take it as truth. It's totally up to you. Question, the government does know about them, but only at the majestic level? Answer, I stated before I'm not naming the department. The term majestic was considered outdated. Okay. What about immaculate? Question, the symbols that you did see, did they remind you of any other symbols you have seen on Earth? Answer, no, just what I mentioned. Question, hey, original poster, what do you make of Eric Davis' memo? I believe you, by the way. And then he asks to link it. Question, how many craft do we have at the moment? Answer, I don't know. I can tell you I've seen about 18 different models pass through for testing and research. Question, is Lockheed Martin involved in reverse engineering? Answer, they are a great company, aren't they? I mean, we already know this. Question, can you describe some of the other tools found on the wrecked craft? Answer, we have found things as simple as basic tools akin to tweezers to the lab. One thing that sticks out to me was an oval-shaped silver ball that would change colors based on how close it was to a source of energy. Another would be a sheet of metal that allowed you to view the bones by placing it near someone's hand. Whoa, so kind of like an X-ray, or like one of those pieces that detects magnets, those little green pieces of plastic that detects magnets. Question, can you describe any injuries or deaths that occurred involving alien craft? Answer, I witnessed no deaths or injuries aside from corpses. I never got to see one we had with an abductee, but they weren't sure at the time if she died on impact. Wait, so they're saying an abductee was in one of these crafts when they recovered it? Whoa, that's dark. Question, we've been told that the aliens use us for food. Answer, never found any food on board. Could be because they remove it before we arrive. Okay, because there is a first team that gets there. He said he is the second team, so possibly. Question, my question is, are they going to invade humanity en masse? Answer, I think wiping us out would be easy for them currently. No idea why they would wait. Question, what do you know about element 115? Answer, what I described above. Has its own field of gravity, but is weak on its own. Question, is it really a stable isotope of the element with atomic number 115? Answer, yes. I'm no expert in that field, though. We are given the basics. Question, how would you go about interacting with it? Answer, you can hold it. Removal is done very gently, though. Wait, so he says you can hold it, but then he's also confused as to why Bob Lazar was able to hold it. Interesting. Question, where is it typically found within downed craft? Answer, compartment near the engine, usually not far from the center of the craft. If the craft has a frame with a centerpiece, we have to extract it from an angle. Not sure what that means. Question, fake, how can an element be anti-gravitational? It would fly to space and you couldn't find it. Answer, maybe my explanation was bad, but I feel like it's just your reading comprehension. It emits a weak field of gravity. It doesn't float away, however. It doesn't float away or hover. Question, why would they allow you to investigate them? Answer, I think they just cut their losses. We don't get much opportunity otherwise. He's talking about why would the other craft allow the humans to investigate them? Question, couldn't it be on purpose to see how much you can discover? Answer, just looking at the way they operate, I doubt it. Question, and isn't it dangerous that the Chinese have this tech? Answer, the US is quite upset over it. They won't trade either because they know we will trade in bad faith, so they aren't exactly wrong. I mean, that is a big problem if that is the case, you know. Any adversary having this tech. I mean, that is the very reason, I think, personally, my opinion on this, why this is kept secret. A lot of people are fighting for absolute disclosure that we have the right to know absolutely everything. But you can also draw a line back to what happened when we found out we can split an atom. It didn't take hours before physicists around the world made the connection and said, wait, we can make a bomb with this. And I think this holds far greater implications. I think if you can distort gravity, obviously it's connected, you know, space and time are connected. If you can mess with space, you can mess with time. I don't know to what extent you can mess with time. I don't know anything about that stuff, but I do know that if you were seeking to make a weapon out of this, you could probably make one that is the most devastating. And that might be the reason why these craft are keeping an eye on us, because they know very well that if you reverse engineer this stuff long enough, something bad's going to come from it. And they've probably seen it happen before, which is why they deployed these mobile construction units as a sort of, you know, safeguard, keeping this planet from exploding like the other ones did. Makes sense when you put it that way. Question, all models powered by Element 115? Answer, every model I've seen operates this way. I've always wanted to see inside the construction unit for this reason alone. Question, the Virginia incident? Answer, I had to Google a bit of this. It seems somewhat far out there if I'm being honest. Okay. Question, what's up with anal probes? Answer, I think we both know where this thread would go if I touch on this topic. Fair enough. Question, are the females aliens sexy? Answer, the ones with or without probes. All right, this is degenerating. Question, hey, what about the Zimbabwe incident where the craft and the Greys landed in Rua, Zimbabwe? The Ariel incident. Very good question. Answer, it doesn't seem likely, but here's the kicker. Based on what they described, I believed them, minus a few things they said. Question, out of curiosity, do you know of any direct contact of agents by them? Answer, never heard of any direct contact started from their end. That doesn't mean we haven't. Okay? Question, I'll never understand this. The current implementation of compartmentalization and complete secrecy is a fool's errand. Answer, one of the minor reasons I'm here, we agree. I do think the initial panic would be really bad, especially for religious community. And that's been sort of touched upon multiple times, that it would cause mass panic, hysteria, the economy would collapse, people, you know, who believe in God, it would crumble the, you know, religious state. But again, I think the far greater implications are war and weaponry. You know, I think this was Hal Puthoff who said this, but if the government discovered a drop of water, the first thing they would do is try to figure out how to drown someone in it. And I think that's very, very telling about what the intentions of the government is. I mean, most of the money goes into this stuff. I'm not saying into the UFO stuff, although potentially, but, you know, what is it, like 90% of all tax-paying dollars goes into weaponry and military upgrade. You know, and for those of you who think I'm exaggerating, if you've ever seen these parades that are held in other countries where they demonstrate and deploy all of the armed forces that they have in a 2 to 3 hour parade, you see this in Korea, you see it in China, you see it in other countries where they display their military capabilities and they show off every single vehicle and missile and throughout this few hour parade. If the United States did one of these parades, it would last months. Just to give you an idea of the sheer scale, all right? So never underestimate the military industrial complex of the United States and their intentions as well. Question, does the recently disclosed Trinity case have any truth to it? Jacques Vallée wrote a book about it. Answer, no idea. So Trinity is something I've not looked into, but I've heard about, and allegedly this was a crash before Roswell. This predates Roswell. Before we had the term flying saucer coined, we were seeing, quote unquote, flying saucers. Interesting case. I'm going to read up on it, by the way. Question, could these crashes have happened on purpose? Answers, I doubt it, but answered this earlier in better detail. Question, before the 20th century, had they influenced human culture in any way at all? Answer, the US wasn't sure since we don't have information to use. The Sumerian stories were a common topic when talking about at least 100 years. I think it's odd young civilizations knew things they were not supposed to know that far back. So this is OP speculating. Question, somebody linked the Eric Davis memo. Answer, some things in this memo track, a lot of things don't. Maybe because I lack knowledge in that area. I did find the date on the third page interesting because 2002 was a very unique year for us. I'm not completely familiar with the Eric Davis memo. Maybe you guys can fill me in. I do remember, I think, glancing at this a while back, but I just, for the life of me, can't remember any of it. I'm going to look at it after this podcast, but if you guys can fill me in on why that might be interesting. Question, you've mentioned that they get upset at the mention of war and conflict. Answer, extremely upset if the threat is believable, like war in other countries, etc. Question, so we've communicated with them? How? How many times? Answer, anytime the topic came up, there was no special mention of communication types, so I assume orally. Quite a few times. Question, what are they like? Answer, see the zookeeper comment above. It's hard to get them to respond to us in general. Question, you just described Atlantis. Answer, the U.S. didn't agree this was the case because they didn't have much faith pooled into one Greek and rare mentions. So, question, allegedly Army personnel who had close encounters with UAPs would have sudden shifts in emotion or would complain of headaches. A few of these people died shortly after coming in contact. When examined, doctors would find evidence of radiation targeting specific areas of the brain. Gary Nolan thinks this is what Havana syndrome actually is or was. Answer, some tools used for abduction cause confusion, and some calm, etc. Some also leave radiation, but nothing crazy. Question, I have a white orb psychically interact with me once. Answer, nothing comes to mind other than the hammers. You can't relay voice or thoughts through them, so I'm not sure. Question, twice I've seen UFOs within hours of experiencing world-shattering, catastrophic trauma. Are the two related, or is this just a massive coincidence? Answer, they have regulars for abduction. We never observed any repeated stops related to that, though. Question, do you still believe in God? Answer, absolutely not. Question, family is important. Answer, they definitely do not view us as family. Tools comment. Question, has there been any discussion internally about the origins of these beings and or the mobile facility? Answer, only amongst ourselves since we see the direction they enter/leave the solar system briefly. The higher-ups definitely know it just wasn't part of what we did. Once it leaves the planet, ignore it. Question, I know you'd previously said 100 years as an estimate of the facility itself. Answer, the U.S. believes it's one extreme or the other. It arrived around 100 years ago and started the process of discovery and construction versus it's been here since long ago and oh hey, there is a ton of civilizations talking about this for ages. Question, came here long ago from space? Answer, from space, yes. From long ago, I'm not entirely sure, and neither was the U.S. I lean more towards recent contact. Question, I'm guessing that the biology department has little to no communication with yours? Answer, I wouldn't know they exist if I didn't see them. We get a basic rundown the higher-ups give us. If we send information forward, it is always passed along. Again, nothing new here. Compartmentalization is, pretty much par for the course in regards to not only secret projects, but a lot of departments and programs in the United States government, even in privatized corporations, even in places like SpaceX, where they're dealing with military grade equipment, you'll still have a lot of compartmentalization. Question, any idea on what happens to the ships and planes and people that the construction unit disappears? Answer, destroyed near instantly with no suffering. Question, can you try to draw some symbols for us? Answer, I can't remember anything specific if I'm being honest. It all looks the same to me. Question, does the language look linear like ours? Answer, yes, but there are soft corners and things like dots, but not too many. Dots is interesting. We've seen a lot of dots. Question, a queen bee essentially is the mind of her workers. Answer, if you mean the construction unit versus UFOs, we wondered that too. Now that's something I touched on at the end of the last video, that hive mind comes to mind here. You know, that potentially these aliens might be AI controlled by some type of hive mind overseeing the entire project. Who knows? Question, what about the space-time manipulation? Any hunches there? Answer, never heard any ideas pitched other than the engine/gravity causing time dilation. This is what Bob said. There was time dilation when the emitters were focused on a certain area. They would see a candle flame freeze entirely, still emit light, but the flame itself wouldn't flicker. Somebody says, spill the official internal name. And the answer was, should I send you a copy of my driver's license too? Question, I agree OP is not only contradicting actual data we have on UAPs, but is also acting like he has access to all compartmentalized departments of DIA. Answer, if it provides any context, I knew a lot less until I managed the team the last few years. You should be skeptical. I might be on later, but if not, then the afternoon. He logs off. We still got quite a way to go. We're roughly about 2/3 the way through this deep dive into the 4CHAN whistleblower. Key takeaways here, a lot of mention of element 115, some mention of abductions. Everything seems to track still with what we know about the UAP phenomenon. So either this person is LARPing and they are completely familiar with UFO lore and are answering based on current knowledge of UAP and then adding a little bit of their own storytelling in the mix. Or, yeah, they're telling the truth. Those are the options, right? The options are he's lying, he's telling the truth. If he's lying, good job. You know, a lot of this does seem very well thought out, like the universe building. You know, like when you're building Star Wars or when you're building Dune, you have to build a universe and everything has to coincide with everything else in order to justify its existence. And if one thing is out of whack, then the universe sort of falls apart and you're retracted from the fiction, right? When creating a story. And so you have to be very meticulous on how you create this universe to make sure things don't contradict any other pieces of evidence. And I think so far he's done a pretty good job of that. But what are your thoughts? Have you found any inconsistencies with today's reading? I would love to know in the comments below. I would also, love to see if Bob Lazar, what he would have to say. Part of me feels that he would say, yeah, I guess this checks out. But because, again, he doesn't know all the details, so he has to speculate and assume that what this guy's talking about is true as well. Going to look into the Davis files, the Eric Davis memo. It rings a bell. Let me just look that up real quick. Also, if you were to do this nowadays, like this type of Q&A with ChatGPT, I feel like you could create a pretty good LARP. So I would be wary of anything coming out online based on the fact that we can just use an engine to, simulate this universe. So Davis collaborated with Bigelow Aerospace, okay. Purportedly had a conversation with Admiral Thomas Wilson. Oh, yes, this is where, yes. And they discussed deep black or unacknowledged special access programs related to recovered non-human technology. Okay, this might be something we dive into after this and read through it, because I'm not sure I read through the entire thing or what it entails, but I do remember glancing at it. So maybe we'll look into that. Let me know. All right, folks, I think we've done our due diligence on today's episode of Debriefed. Before we leave, I would ask you guys, if it isn't too much to ask, if you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. Maybe write down, some nice words about what you thought of the podcast. It really does help propel us into an algorithm that favors, this type of stuff, and that would be really great for us. Also, at the top of the episode, we had, just like every episode, we had someone call in with their sighting or their experience. And if you want to call in, and I highly encourage you to call in, we'll keep it anonymous, but tell us your story of the time you saw something unexplained, or the time you interacted with an entity or some type of unexplainable phenomena. We would love to hear about it. It makes for really compelling storytelling over here. And who knows, maybe someone out there is also going to, connect with this in some way. And lastly, I know I said it at the top, but we are doing memberships right now on YouTube as well as Patreon. We have weekly episodes and updates coming out. We've got movie nights over on the secret section of our Discord. We have Discord. By the way, Discord's free. You guys can check it out, but there is a top secret section where we do book club, movie night, and discuss future and current investigations. I dropped the patch that we were looking at a few days prior to this podcast into the Discord, and that is how I was able to accumulate some of the information that I had today. So you guys actually helped me out, and for that I thank you. Namely Hex0811, thank you so much for putting in the research and helping me spread this information. Guys, that's all I'm going to leave you with here today. I've spoken enough. I'm like losing my voice and my mind because this stuff is super compelling. We'll see you guys on the next video. I'm going to try to upload one of these before the hearing, the last final part, hopefully. I usually upload on Friday, Thursday for the patrons, but I'm going to probably upload it before because I do want everyone to be on the same page before next Thursday. Wednesday's the hearing. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you then. Peace.